With most of free agency already in the books, it's safe to say the 2023 NFL season is already upon us. And it's this time every single year that every fan base gets a huge sense of optimism as well as false hope. Trust me, I've been a Browns fan my entire life. But with a good sense now of how most teams will look going into the new season, we wanted to give our way too early NFL power rankings. And we heard you guys. In last episode, we kind of dragged it out, going through every single team in detail. We heard you guys. From now on, any rankings video that we do on this channel, if the quantity of what we're ranking is over 10, we'll be using a tier system in which we are using today. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Bakari. Steve, how you feeling on this Thursday morning, heading into the weekend?
I feel good. I'm ready to get this new tier system started.
Absolutely. This is you guys' early reminder that if you do enjoy what you're seeing or hearing, support us down below. We're I guess, reclosing in on 100 subscribers. So be that 100th guy and support us. You know, we're on YouTube Shorts, we're on TikTok. Everything's on your screen now. Go ahead and support us if you guys have the time. But without further ado, I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. We have some news to get into first, but then we're going to get into these rankings. We're going to start here. Again, we're going to resurface this idea for you guys. We have 2 ideas so far, and I just want to remind you guys to get those submissions in. You know, there's, I don't want to say a tendency, but a lot of the fans of this show will wait till the very last minute to get these ideas in, and then we got to kind of scramble at the very end to put everything together for you guys for the show. So get those things in early and get them in now. The most support, or the comment with the most support, will be the show for next Tuesday.
Yep.
In honor of the 100 subs. But moving over to no Bron, no problem. The Cavs make the playoffs for the first time without LeBron James since 1998. Just as Cavs fans, we're very excited for this team. And do you think we could be legitimate contenders? Or are we just great contender or great a good matchup, I guess?
I think we're a good matchup, but I mean I think we've seen it before where good matchups have made it to the finals. You know, I think back to like the Heat in the bubble. Phoenix, when they made it that first time, they were a good matchup for a lot of teams. I don't think anybody was expecting them, especially in Chris Paul's first year, to go to the finals. But I like the growth of the team, especially like the last month or two. I feel like a lot of people have stepped up in their roles or have a more defined definition of their roles, which has resulted in good team basketball, good team playing style. Even though we just dropped a game versus Atlanta, it was still a good game. So, yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, we just need to be healthy at this point. We have some All-NBA players in Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. And we have some All-NBA defenders in Evan Mobley, you know, and some would argue Jared Allen, right? But the team, everybody wants to play there. And the word I was looking for earlier was pretender as compared to a contender. But like the beam, the Kings, they end their 16 or 17-year playoff drought. It's either or, but it was the longest playoff drought of any professional sports team in the United States. And also, shout out to Keegan Murray. He broke the rookie's three-pointer made record for a season. It was formerly held by Donovan Mitchell, who we just talked about. Shout out Keegan Murray. Shout out the Kings for ending that long playoff drought. I did want to bring this to your attention that we saw Draymond recently come out and he said that he's aiming for the Warriors to play the Kings in the first round. But his reasoning was it's a light traveling schedule for the Warriors. Are you buying that?
No, I'm not buying that. I think the Warriors are we all know what type of team the Warriors are and who they have, the type of egos they have on that team is what I'm trying to say. Like, we all know Klay has a huge ego. Steph, you know, rightfully has a huge ego. So does Draymond. The guys who have won the championship on that team, they all have huge egos. So they think that they can put themselves in if they can try and get themselves to an easier team that they think, like the Kings, then, you know, that'll probably be better for them. But, you know, the last thing I think the Warriors want to do is run into a team like Sacramento who have a chip on their shoulder to show people the regular season wasn't fluke, and then get bounced first round, especially with their road troubles this year.
They're still the historically best offense of all time, this Kings team we're talking about. And, I mean, they could be a disaster for any team in a 7-game series if they can get hot, you know, for the entire season. They have De'Aaron Fox. He's the leader in the league for clutch time points. This Kings team is going to be very fun to watch when it comes to playoff time. Yeah. But ducking smoke, Joel Embiid with a calf injury. He was a late-game scratch a couple days ago against the Denver Nuggets, and he missed the game against Nikola Jokic. Do you think that the Sixers did this on purpose? Do you think that they held him out because the only time that they did play earlier in the year, Embiid had his way. Embiid had his way at 47-point triple-double or something like that, something crazy against Nikola Jokic. And I think, do you think the Sixers did that on purpose, held him out, so that image could be there for him to win MVP?
I don't, only because when they played Chicago, he actually that's when they came out and said that he had sustained an injury. And I think it was, I believe it was a calf injury. So I think at this point in the season they're more so cautious. I think they would have held him out whether it was Denver or whether it was Detroit. I think at this point in the season, I think both players care about the MVP, but I think more so for Joel Embiid, he's more focused on playoff success this year. And wants to change those playoff narratives around him. So, and I mean, I think even hurt, we've seen Embiid get, going stretches of 30 and 12, and he has some type of small injury. So, I don't think it would have changed his play that much anyway.
Well, we know that how, close this MVP race is. We have Giannis, Joel, Jokic. We could argue some other players, but it's really a three-man race, and it's a super competitive three-man race. I want to bring a stat to your attention. I saw it. And just one player in NBA history has missed 12 or more games in a season and still won the MVP that season. And that was Bill Walton all the way back in 1977 and 78. And Joel Embiid, right now he's the betting favorite in Vegas to win the MVP, but he's missed 14 games. Do you think, with the MVP race being this close, do you think the voters should maybe go a different way? Do you think that you missing that amount of games, if I could talk, do you think that should play part in who they vote for?
I think with any award, the amount of games you play should be taken in perspective, because if you say, obviously it's easier for somebody who's only played 40-something games to average, 28, 12, and 7. But if you played all 82 and you're averaging, 27 and a half, 11 and 7, then, obviously the player who played more games did it for a longer stretch of time. So I think amount of games should be taken into consideration, but I think impact also. We've seen Giannis miss games this year, and his team has looked, pretty much the same as far as, defense and players stepping up. Philly, they'll drop a game or two when Joel misses, but we haven't really seen Jokic miss any games. So, with how tight this race is, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes down to one of the reasons Jokic wins MVP at the end of the season.
We have the award show coming up next Thursday for our 50th episode on the channel. I'm not going to ask you who is your MVP, but does that stat that we read off, does that change your MVP pick at all?
No.
It does not. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But moving over to a new segment we introduced on Tuesday, we're here to officially announce that player and the first ever winner of the Tap Player of the Week. I want to preface this by saying that we decided it's best, because of our podcasting schedule, that we go from Thursday to Thursday. So just keep that in mind as we are announcing these players of the week. So from today to next Thursday, we'll have another player of the week, so on and so forth. Hopefully you guys get the picture. But Bakari, this is your segment. Let us know who gets the first ever Tap Player of the Week.
Yeah, so the first ever Tap Player of the Week actually is going to go to Jalen Brown of the Boston Celtics. To me, I gave it to Jalen Brown because he went on a stretch to this from Thursday to Thursday. He averaged 28.6 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists on 51% shooting, and they went 2-1. They dropped a game to the Washington Wizards, but I gave it to Jalen Brown because he's really been playing well as of late. There were also a few other people I considered. I considered Evan Mobley of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's been really good on offense and defense. And Nikola Jokic, his averages are insane. You could probably pick a random week and give it to him anytime there. Shout out Drew Holiday as well. He just had 51 points last night. Unfortunately for me, my mind was made up before the game, and he didn't really have the best week before that. But yeah, Jalen Brown, I believe he actually won NBA Player of the Week, which I didn't know until after I picked him for the Tap Player of the Week because, we're more important. So yeah, Jalen Brown, shout out Jalen Brown. He's been playing good. He always plays. I feel like he always flies under the radar too, kind of being that sidekick to Jason Tatum. But, he can be the best player on the team any given night. So, shout out Jalen Brown.
Yeah, Jalen Brown had an amazing week. He had that game against the Spurs where he had 41. And he's really stepped up anytime that Jason Tatum has gone out, and he's showing the world, hey, I don't need Tatum to be the All-NBA player or All-NBA talent that I am on a night-in, night-out basis.
Yeah.
But Jalen Brown, I told you before the show that I was surprised as Cavs fans we didn't have a little biasy going into this first Tap Player of the Week. But Jalen Brown, amazing player. He's had a lot of questionable comments recently.
Yeah.
But
questionable for Celtics fans.
Exactly.
Come to Cleveland, Jalen.
Right. we need you. We'll give you Garland. But we're going to move on to our power rankings now. I just want to let you guys know we have a 5-tier system. So all 32 teams fit into these 5 tiers. We have the rebuilding / Caleb Williams quarterback out of USC tier. Basically just the teams that are going to suck this year. They're going to have a high draft pick and go after the Caleb Williams of the world. We have a mediocre tier or just a year away tier. These are teams that are just the 6-7 win teams you see. They're just a year away. We have the barely missed the playoffs. These are fringe playoff teams that are just right outside. Maybe they have an injury or two, but they just barely missed the cut. And we have the NFC playoff teams, the AFC playoff teams, and then for both conferences, we have our Super Bowl contenders. We're not always going to have the same amount of teams. That's very important. As you guys see, some of these graphics might be uneven in the numbers, but it all plays a part. We have 32 teams, 5 tiers. Do you want to kick us off with our first tier in the rebuilding / Caleb Williams tier?
Yeah, so my rebuilding tier, I have, for my 2 AFC teams are the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans. Then I move into the NFC, and I have the Arizona Cardinals, Atlanta Falcons, Los Angeles Rams, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Washington Commanders. I believe most of these, or all of these teams are going to be rebuilding this year. I believe that they're multiple pieces away from being a playoff team, whether that's a quarterback or, defense or whatever that may be. Questions around their future. Maybe they're getting older like the Rams are in this situation.
They've lost a lot of pieces.
Yeah, so I believe that these teams, I'm not expecting anything from these teams this upcoming year. Like the Cardinals, Kyler Murray is probably going to be out, at least.
Probably going to miss 10, 12 games.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the season at that point. The season will be decided by then, or at least you would think so. The Texans, they'll probably get their franchise QB this year, but I don't believe that it'll be enough to propel them. Maybe, if anything, the only other tier jump I could think of is maybe mediocre, maybe. But I don't believe the Falcons or the Buccaneers will be anything this year. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions with quarterbacks, and a lot of these teams are talented. The Commanders are very talented. The Buccaneers are a very talented team, but the quarterback is the most important position. And when you don't have a good one, or at least a decent one, you're not going to make it anywhere of relevance, like the Bucs and the Commanders. We don't know how Stafford's going to look in the Rams uniforms this year. The Falcons, they're young. I don't believe in their head coach. And the Cardinals, you touched on it, their franchise quarterback, or at least hopeful franchise guy, is going to be out for 10 to 12 games this season, so it's not a good look for them. The Colts, they're a complete roster, but whoever young quarterback they draft is going to need some time to develop. But the only difference between all of our 7 teams here on both sides, I have the Las Vegas Raiders. You have the Houston Texans. That's the only difference here in this tier. And, you might be like, oh, and that sounds crazy. This Raiders team has been very decent. And, they've been that mediocre 7 to 8 or 7 to 9, maybe even a 10-win team every single season. But I don't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo, to be a franchise guy. And look, Josh Jacobs is going to come back with a chip on his shoulder. He's in a contract year. He's going to want to get that money from the Raiders. Devontae Adams is going to be a little peed off. He sucked last year, or at least the team sucked last year. Devontae was good. But they're going to want to win a lot more games. I just don't believe in Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't believe in Josh McDaniels as a head coach. They have some defensive questions there, as they have done pretty much nothing to resolve those issues. So the Raiders here, they're going to be my team here. Give me your argument. I guess you kind of did, but give me your argument for the Texans here instead of a Raiders team.
Yeah, like I said, I just have a little bit more faith, as crazy as it sounds, in Jimmy and that Vegas team and being mediocre this year. Like you touched on it, they're always a team that seems to find a way to at least win 7 games. Houston, We know that they just had Lovie Smith, and he went out on his way out. He got them that win and versus who was it, the Colts, I believe,
late in the season.
Yeah, that gave
Shout
them
out
the
Lovie.
second pick because they were supposed to get the first pick, win that game, gets the second pick. That's his parting gift. I just think that like you mentioned for Indiana or Indianapolis, their young QB is going to it's going to take a little bit of time to get him going.
Unless they get Bryce Young at 4.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. But saying that the Texans take him at 2, it'll take Bryce Young a little bit of time to get going. There are already some questions, professionals have those questions around Bryce Young and his height and weight and everything like that. So it'll take time for that young QB to get going in the league. And, the Texans, they have talented people at other positions, but like you said, QB is just the most important position overall. And when you have a rookie who has never played in the league before, I at least take Jimmy's size of work a little bit more considerable.
I just wish they had a little bit more defense there in Las Vegas, as it's Max Crosby and a bunch of no names, right? But moving over to the mediocre / a year away tier, we have the same teams here, right? But you have the same teams here that we do have, just so you guys know at home. We have the Baltimore Ravens, the New England Patriots, the Tennessee Titans, the Chicago Bears, and the Green Bay Packers. I have the Houston Texans in this mediocre / a year away tier, and that is strictly if they get Bryce Young. If they get Bryce Young, they've brought in some nice pieces this offseason. Have they had a better offseason than, let's say, a younger team like Carolina with the number 1 pick? No, Carolina's in a great position. But Houston, to me, Bryce Young can be that guy that steps in day one like Joe Burrow, like other great young quarterbacks like Herbert, and they can win a decent amount of games. I think this team can shock you next year, win 5, 6, 7, 8 games. And I really believe in I haven't seen D'Amico Ryans be a head coach anywhere. But I believe in him for whatever reason. It's a feeling of this Texans team. Their division, first off, I will say that, is very weak. Regardless of how you put it, we've had 3 teams already in the bottom 2 tiers. So this division is wide open. The Texans could take it, and that's why I have them as a mediocre team.
Yeah, and I have in my mediocre, I have all the teams you said except obviously the Raiders and the Panthers in this. The argument for the Raiders, like I basically just said, is I believe I have a little bit more faith in Jimmy than I do a rookie QB who hasn't played in the league yet. And like you said, you'll have players like Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams come in and try and say, hey, last year was just an anomaly for us. We feel like that's not what we can play up to. Yeah, the defense has questions. Hopefully they can go and get like a playmaker in the secondary in the first round of this draft. It won't answer all the questions they have, but it'll be a step in the right direction. I believe they'll at least win, about 7 or 8 games this year. And I have the Panthers here as well. I like the moves the Panthers have made, even trading for the first pick. But like I said, it'll be hard. You draft I'm assuming they'll take C.J. Stroud. I do like C.J. Stroud. I have faith in C.J. Stroud. But like I said, it's still a rookie QB. That's the only reason I have, certain teams here is because, rookie QBs again.
But absolutely. I mean, a couple other teams that we kind of just ran over. We both have the Ravens. We don't know what's going to go on with Lamar this year. Is he going to play? Is he going to sit out? I mean, he could still be traded for all we know. But we have the Patriots here. The Patriots are a solid team. And unless they do get a player like Lamar, though, they are going to be in that purgatory stage because their division, especially if Rodgers goes to the Jets, that division is going to be stacked with the Dolphins, exciting team, the Bills, and then Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. The Titans. Derrick Henry. That's all we're saying. The Bears, Justin Fields continuing to develop that team. They've got a couple nice pieces there. And for the Packers in that same division, it's Jordan Love time, baby, but it's his first year as a starter. I'm not expecting much from Jordan Love. But moving over, the barely missing the playoffs. This is the fringe playoff teams. The 10, the 9 to 11 win teams that, whether if it's a stacked division or whether if it's a late game or a late season push for the playoffs, they just barely missed the cut. For both of us, we both have the Steelers, the Denver Broncos, and the New York Jets, as well as the New York Giants, both New York teams showing out there. The only difference here is I have the Carolina Panthers. You touched on a lot of great points. Adam Thielen, We need to get him drug tested. But he believes that the Panthers are a Super Bowl contender year one. Doesn't matter which quarterback. Apparently to Adam Thielen, they're ready to go, right? They're ready for the long haul. But I don't see it. I believe that they will show strides. They've brought in a lot of great pieces. They still have the great defense and the great defensive young talent there in J.C. Horn and then a couple of the young pieces there that just aren't that are slipping my mind right now. But they have a great young defense, a fun offense with a lot of veterans, and they're going to be able to help whoever the young quarterback is from day one. And they're going to be able to, I think, surprise some teams. Their division's not the strongest, as we have questions with every team in that division. They might be able to surprise some teams.
Yeah, and like I said before, even though I had them in a mediocre tier, some of these teams are subject to change or move up a tier. I was just going based off of, like I said, quarterback was my biggest concern for a lot of these teams. So, and other than that, we have the same teams here, for like the Broncos.
Sean Payton. Man.
Yeah, Sean Payton. I do have faith in Sean Payton to turn the Broncos around from what they were last season. I just don't know if I have that same faith in Russell Wilson. We'll see if Sean Payton can kind of turn around his career trajectory at this point. And like a team like the Jets, it was like I wanted them to make the playoffs, especially if they get Aaron Rodgers, but I couldn't have a team like the Bills miss the playoffs. So that was my reasoning there. And like I said, as of right now, they still are stuck with Zach Wilson. And even though the Giants just made it last year as well, I just don't know. I don't know if 1 year of Daniel Jones doing what he did last year was enough for me to believe in him, especially after the contract he's gotten. We'll have to see there. So
some players do become content after getting a big contract like that. It usually takes them, the next year after a big contract. For some of these players, they kind of slip a little bit. They don't have the same focus and intensity, each and every day to try and get that money. Yeah. And that's why contract years, you want to bet on those players because they're going to go out and play at 110%, like Josh Jacobs this upcoming year, as we're expecting. But, we have Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett. I think he's going to take some strides. We'll have to see if Najee can bounce back from the bad season he had last year. This Steelers team, the biggest reason I have them here, they have some good talent over there. They have some veterans mixed in with some younger pieces. They brought in Pat Pete to be the captain of their defense. But they have Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mike Tomlin, he's never had a losing season. I don't see it happening. The Steelers are going to win 8-9 games, and they're going to barely miss the playoffs like they have previously. But Mike Tomlin is super underrated, as crazy as that sounds. But he finds the way to win. Doesn't matter if you give him a punter at quarterback, he's going to get you 6, 7, 8 wins. And that's why they're going to barely miss the playoffs. Just like you said, Sean Payton, for me as a Drew Brees fan, is one of my favorite coaches. I hope he can turn Russell around like he did with Drew Brees. The Jets, there's rumors that Odell is now going to be joining the Jets if Aaron Rodgers does go there. That makes their offense even more dangerous. But you touched on a lot of great points with the Giants there, as I don't believe in Daniel Jones either. We just talked about it with players becoming content. But these are the teams that are going to barely miss the playoffs. Yeah. Any last thoughts on these teams on the screen here?
No, you hit like Mike Tomlin was the reason I have the Steelers. Any other coach, I probably would have had them in a mediocre tier. Mike Tomlin, I go back to that game where they played Cincinnati, I believe, last year, and it went into overtime. And, wow, it was just a crazy game. I remember that. And then, for the Giants, it was just Daniel Jones getting this contract. What does that mean for him? We've seen the Giants give a contract to Kenny Galladay, and he's been awful with it until they released him. So, yeah.
Well, big year for Saquon as well. As they just placed a franchise tag on him. Expect Saquon to have a monster year, especially to the fantasy players. Saquon should be a top 3 pick. But moving over to our NFC playoff teams, as you see, it's a little uneven. Right? How can we have uneven playoff teams as only 14 teams make it? That's very simple. We have our playoff teams, and then we have our Super Bowl contenders. So any teams here that you don't see in the NFC are going to be in that Super Bowl contenders tier. But right now, we have a lot of the same teams. But the biggest difference is I have the Dallas Cowboys here. The Dallas Cowboys as a wild card team to me, compared to maybe a contender. I have the Cowboys here because they're the Cowboys. They're going to win 10, 11 games. They're going to be decent. They're going to, give all their fan base false hope, like us Browns fans. and they're going to fall short like typical Cowboy fashion. I do want to say now with Zeke out of the building, they can really give the ball strictly to Pollard and see what they got there, because Pollard, a lot of people have been saying for years that he is the best back in that backfield. Now this year he really gets to show it.
Yeah, and I have, obviously I don't have the Cowboys here. I'll wait to say what I have to say about them until we get to that screen. But yeah, a lot of these, like I think the Vikings, I think the Vikings should make it. Justin Jefferson just had an amazing year. I mean, we saw what Kirk Cousins did when it wasn't a primetime game. The Lions, I believe the Lions will only improve after last year. The Packers had Aaron Rodgers last year, and the Lions gave him a good run for their money. Had circumstances been a little different earlier in the season, we would have saw the Lions back in the playoffs. The Saints, they went out and got Derek Carr. Do I believe Derek Carr is that much better to put them there? I just think their division is just that bad right now. So by default, the Saints are there. Seattle, we'll have to see if Geno can keep up the success. It looks like he's still putting in the work after getting this contract. It looks like he still hasn't wrote back, and they still have some good pieces there. They still have a top pick in the draft, so they can only get better. And San Francisco is also still here. They had it. San Francisco, has had a lot of good moves this offseason. It's just the
Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, exactly. Javon Hargrave. It's just, for me, I don't know when. We'll have to see who their quarterback, who comes back first. Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. So we'll have to see between there and how that starts their season.
I will say this before we go any further. My division winners I have the Detroit Lions for the North. For the South, I have the Saints, and for the West, I have the 49ers. My wild card teams are the Cowboys, Vikings, and Seattle. Go ahead and run through your division winners and your wild card teams. As you see, it's a little uneven. We still have some teams to talk about.
Yeah, so my division winners are the Minnesota Vikings, the New Orleans Saints, and the San Francisco 49ers. And my wild card teams are the Detroit Lions and the Seattle Seahawks.
Absolutely. But really quick here, before we move on, this Lions team, I so badly, I debated for a while there for two divisions. For the AFC East, who I was going to have winning that division, and for the NFC North. The Bears are promising. The Packers, we don't know what's going to go on with Jordan Love, if he's the real deal or not. But we know the Vikings, last year, we knew they were going to win the division, and they went and did that in dominant fashion. They had a game where they came back down 34 points or something like that against the Colts. But the Vikings, a very solid team. They've arguably the best receiver in football, a very talented offense, veteran quarterback who wins a lot of games. But I went with the Lions here. They brought back their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who was it was a huge retain for this Lions team going forward. The culture is amazing there. They picked up some great pieces with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was an All-Pro last year. This Lions team could be very dangerous. I think they're going to be very fun, and I think they win the NFC North. I guess it all just depends on Jared Goff.
Yeah, everybody in the Lions building they all have faith in Jared Goff. They were just asked, about the Lamar, and Dan Campbell was pretty much just like, hey, Lamar is a heck of a player, but we have Jared Goff. Well, I don't know if I would have said the same thing, but they have full confidence in Jared Goff can get them to the playoffs and get them to where they want to go. So I'll have that same confidence in putting them in the playoffs too.
We'll have to see, right? It's a big year for Jared Goff. I think if they don't do anything this year, they will be a team for a Lamar Jackson type player.
Yeah.
But the only other team I want to talk about here, you kind of touched on it. There's a lot of quarterback concerns with San Fran. It might raise some questions. Why are they not a Super Bowl contender? They went to the almost the Super Bowl last year with a guy who nobody knew before he got the starting job there in San Fran in Brock Purdy. But Brock Purdy, he's scheduled to have Tommy John surgery on his elbow in this offseason. And if he doesn't get it, then he's going to be playing through an injury all season long. Trey Lance, he had that knee injury last year. We don't know when he's going to return. Right now, he's scheduled for the first week 2 or week 3 of the NFL season. With how young he is, maybe he starts the season, as a speedy recovery there. But they did sign Sam Darnold. I think he can play as well as Jimmy Garoppolo, and keep them afloat. But I mean, even if they want to give the keys to Trey Lance and have him be the guy, we haven't seen anything from Trey Lance, at least not significant. So can he be the guy? I'm not sure if we want to take that risk in year 1 of being a full starter against the dominant NFC opponents. But moving over to the AFC, go ahead and read your division winners as well as your wildcard teams.
Yeah, so I have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills as my division winners. And then my wildcard teams are the Miami Dolphins, Cleveland Browns, and the Los Angeles Chargers.
Same thing here, but I switched the division winner for the AFC East. I have the Jacksonville Jaguars winning the AFC South. In the AFC East, I have the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, obviously, we don't know what's going to go on with Tua Tagovailoa and his health concerns. But if he's ready to go, this Dolphins team, there's a head coaching meeting here a couple days ago. And the Dolphins coach, I can't think of his name right now for whatever reason.
Mike McDaniels.
Mike McDaniel, there we go. But he has a lot of confidence in Tua. He said at that interview, we have no interest in trading for Lamar. We want to stick it out with Tua, as they believe he could be their guy going forward. I believe Mike McDaniel. Tua showed a lot of focus or a lot of improvement last year. He had that one game against the Ravens where he threw for 530 yards or something. Tua has the potential, and I believe at full strength, this team with Tyreek, with Jalen Waddle, and all the great defensive pieces they have, they can be a very dominant team. They win the AFC East for me, and then my wildcard teams are the same. I have the Bills, the Browns, and the Chargers. I want to ask you, we're Browns fans. Do you think this is the year we could finally put it together and be somewhat of a contender?
I do. I think Deshaun Watson will only obviously get better.
Can't get worse.
Than he was last year. And even last year, he showed there were a few glimpses every few drives. He might do something. You're like, oh, wow, we got Deshaun Watson back there. I think after an off season of just putting in the work, training, getting used to the playbook, getting used to the staff and everything, or getting more accustomed to everything, and then after the moves we made, especially for our defensive line in the offseason, this offseason, going out and getting Elijah Moore, I believe that this team has all the pieces to at least become a solid playoff team, back to where we were when we had Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. I believe that this team has the makings of that. You touched on it. We had the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins switched in the East. I believe that I'm not as high on Tua, I think, as you are, and Mike. It's definitely not as Mike McDaniels. I'm not as high on his health. It seems like every year there's something with Tua where he's going to miss at least 3 to 4 games, and I do. He did improve. There's no denying he did improve last year. It's just his decision making. Sometimes he'll throw, every game it feels like every 2 games he'll throw 1 or 2 picks, and he's just like, man, Tua, where are you throwing it to? And I believe that if this season is as competitive in this division as we think it's going to be, those will be killers. Even though they have improved on defense, you just can't turn the ball over like Tua does.
I mean, yeah, you can't give Josh Allen or let's say Aaron Rodgers if he's with the Jets, or even a Bill Belichick-led team. You can't give those guys too many chances. So that is an area of concern. I just believe regular season wise, I just believe the Dolphins can maybe edge out a win or two, as they've proven they can beat the Bills without, or with not being at full strength in this last year. But going back to the Browns here, before we move on to our Super Bowl contenders, I do want to say that this is that false hope I was talking about. This is that optimism, and maybe it's just me being stupid. But I think I think this year we're going to show the world, one, we have Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to come back. Yeah, whether if he did it or not, right? He's an incredible football player. And on the field, I think last year, when you take any 800 days off from any professional sport, there's going to be rust. It's not easy, and I think the world was able to see, past the allegations, past the off-the-field stuff. When you look at it at base level, when you have a player of his talent, even as great as he is, when you take 800 days off, you're going to be rusty. And he showed that throughout the rest of the year. But it's going to be a big year. He has a full season now with the Browns, despite injury, or unless he does get hurt. Right? Hopefully, knock on wood, he doesn't. But he's going to have a full season with us. It's a big year for the Browns because of his contract. And it's a big year for the Browns because if we don't do anything this year, Stefanski's gone. We don't know if Myles Garrett might want out. This could be a very big year for the Browns. I think at the very minimum, we need to be a 5 or 6 seed in this year's playoffs. And the Browns, big year. I think we can really do something. I would like another receiver in our room, as right now our starting 3 would be Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Elijah Moore, which, we don't really know what we have with Elijah Moore and throughout a full season because he has his own fair share of injury concerns. I mean, yeah, we did bring on Marquise Goodwin.
Yeah,
but he's not a game changer.
Yeah.
You know, we the Browns don't seem to use those speedsters like Anthony Schwartz and
Well,
David Bell.
Anthony Schwartz, he couldn't catch air if you told him to. So,
you know, right now all he can catch is the left side of the bench. But moving over to our Super Bowl contenders, we're flying through this, but this is where we talk about the big time teams. This is where we talk about the teams that if you had to bet your mortgage on it, these are the teams to bet it on, right?
Yeah.
In the AFC, I have two title contenders. We have the same in the AFC, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. In the NFC, I only have one, and that is the returning Philadelphia Eagles. Who is your additional Super Bowl contender?
Let's go, baby. Let's show them we are. I got the Dallas Cowboys here. As of right now, for the next however many minutes that I will talk about the Cowboys, I am a Cowboys stan. We just brought in Brandon Cooks. We just brought in Stephon Gilmore. We just got rid of Zeke. We're getting Tony Pollard more touches, like you touched on earlier. You know, okay, now I'm gonna tone it back a little bit.
I love the energy.
I'm gonna be real here. You know, obviously the real cause is, you know, we've seen Dak play bigger than himself sometimes. We've also seen him shrink to, you know, being one of the, like, you're like, is that a third string out there? He has the turnover concerns, obviously, and the decision making in his own rights. You know, I don't know if I believe in Mike McCarthy as much as Jerry Jones does either. But, you know, the thing about the Cowboys is they always have a roster that look on paper, you're like, this is a Super Bowl contender, and that's what I'm going to take away from it. Even though we know Dak and his turnovers, Mike McCarthy and his time management and final play strategies, you know, they still have Micah Parsons, Trevon Diggs, and
Gilmore now.
Yeah, they brought in Stephon Gilmore on offense. They have CeeDee Lamb, brought in Brandon Cooks, Tony Pollard. They have a stacked offense and defense. So maybe this year, this is finally the year they can at least make it to a Super Bowl.
I think this year the biggest question for the Cowboys is, well, one, can Dak finally get over that hump of being a reliable playoff quarterback? I would say no. But the biggest thing here is that the Cowboys have lost some valuable offensive linemen.
They have, yeah.
The top name is Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott being that center in the playoff game.
Listen, what he did in that playoff game, that was legendary, folks. You should all go back and look at the tape. That is how you want your kids to play. That is how they make it to the league right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to see the field when you're looking up at the sky, right? But there's some questions there with Mike McCarthy. You know, the Cowboys are going to cowboy, and that's the only reason I don't have them as a title contender. But like you said, they do always have one of the most complete rosters in the game of football each and every year. They have the money because it's Jerry Jones.
Yeah. But
they have the money, and they always have one of the most complete teams. But moving over, I have the Eagles. I think, enough said. They have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, a stacked running back room, Devontae Smith, great defense. Sure, they lost some pieces, but they still brought back Darius Slay. They still have some great defensive pieces there. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham on their last dance next year.
James Bradbury they brought back too.
James Bradbury. I mean, not too long ago, James Bradbury was an all-pro with the Giants. This team is so complete from top down. I think there's still a landing spot for a lot of players that could be cut mid-season. You know, just like the buyout market in the NBA, they're going to be that team that people want to join. Jason Kelce, he's coming back for another year. I hope he gets one if it's not the team that I have winning it all.
Yeah, and so I have the Eagles right there as well. Everything you just said, that's my basic reasoning. Listen, Jalen Hurts has taken extraordinary leaps every single year he's been in the league. I think, you know, as crazy as it sounds, we saw how good he was last year, how good he was in the play, or especially in the Super Bowl last year. I think that he can still take another leap in his game. I don't think that he'll stop taking those leaps to get better at the mental aspect of the game because all the physical tools are there. You know, and that leads into the next team I have, or I guess we both have, is the Kansas.
Quick. Yeah. Real quick. I know we're about to get into the GOAT, talk about the greatest football player of all time, but really quick, I just want to ask. You know, we know how dominant Jalen Hurts was, and you've been a Jalen Hurts fan since he was drafted. I'm not going to lie. As a Carson Wentz fan, I didn't want to accept the greatness of Jalen Hurts. But do you think that, well, one, where do you think he ranks among quarterbacks? And do you think after, let's say he has a year on par with this year, do you think he could argue with Pat Mahomes as the number one quarterback, or at least at the bare minimum be the solidified number two?
I can answer your second question more easily than I can answer the first one. I do think that if he plays just like if he plays
or at least a little worse.
Yeah, if he plays even just slightly worse, but they have the same result of going to the Super Bowl at least, slightly worse may only drop him, one or two spots in the QB rankings. But if he plays either the same, a little bit better, or a little bit worse, he can solidify himself as the number 2 because everybody saw what he was made of when it was time last year. And as far as top QBs in the league, you have to say Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow are better.
I think we have the top 3 quarterbacks on this page.
Yeah, exactly. Then I think after those two, you're moving into the Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert type of category.
Josh
Allen, and all of those players. Even argue where Lamar goes and all of that.
Right.
So yeah, I think outside of right now, Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow. That's when you start the talks for Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and all those QBs. But if he plays just like he did last year, he could leap Joe Burrow on my list at least.
I'm going to kick it off here just because I kind of sidetracked you there. But we're moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, former Super Bowl champs, or the reigning Super Bowl champs. They've won 2 in the last 4 years. This team has the best player on the planet, I was going to say Lamar Jackson. But they have Patrick Mahomes, the only guy that right now is on the career trajectory to at least challenge Tom Brady for that running. This team is great. They have arguably the best coach in the league in Andy Reid, Travis Kelce. I mean, top to bottom, this team is a great team. It's so amazing to watch this team work in the offseason because, boom, they lost Orlando Brown, who they traded a first-round pick for. Oh, boom, okay, they lost an all-pro left tackle. What do? We're going to go with an all-pro second team in Jawan Taylor, and he's going to go play that left side, replace him, give him more money, because Orlando Brown doesn't want to be here. So you don't want to be here, fine. We'll go replace you, and we're still going to play at the same level, if not better. This Chiefs team is a plug-and-play system for any player. I'm expecting big strides from their younger players here, like Pacheco and Sky Moore, but this team's going to be dominant year in, year out until Mahomes gets hurt.
Yeah, this Chiefs team, if it makes sense, they feel... It's when I see a team that I like play the Chiefs, it's like I get a hopeless feeling. In the Super Bowl, even when the Eagles went up, I'm like, yeah, but the Chiefs are going to come back some way, somehow. And I hated that it happened like it did. But the Chiefs, they give me more fear than the Golden State Warriors did in their prime, being a Cavs fan as well. Like this Chiefs
you think so?
team,
That's an argument.
I think they do. I think Patrick Mahomes is, he's just that good that you can never ever count him out. At least with the Warriors, Steph Curry would, it took Kevin Durant coming and putting a knife in your back. But with this Chiefs team, it is Pat Mahomes, it is Travis Kelce. They are going to get those huge chunk plays off. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to be wide open down the field, 45 yards, untouched, uncovered in the end zone, and everybody's going to be praising Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and whoever, like a Kadarius Toney type player. They will all. It's just scary about what this team can do, and I'm right with you. They're the reigning champs for a reason.
Completely unrelated to their Super Bowl chances of winning. I'd love to see a Cam Newton signing there with the Chase Daniel, I want to say. It was Chase Daniel. He retired this year, and they don't have a backup quarterback. So I would love to see a Cam Newton there, especially in the goal line packages where they have like those funky packages where Travis Kelce's the quarterback or Blake Bell is the quarterback. Why not get Cam Newton in there? He can do the same thing and run the options and run the QB powers there on like the 2-point conversions. But also, I'm a Cam Newton fan. He went to the Gators. He was probably one of the best college football players I've ever seen. Won an MVP. Amazing player for Cam Newton. It's I do think there's 32 better quarterbacks than him.
Yeah, there's probably 64 better than him.
Despite his belief, but Cam Newton, he could still be a reliable backup. But moving over, I'm not sure if this is your answer. But this is my Super Bowl favorite this year. This is a team led by a quarterback that I think that is the solidified number 2 best player in the league. He is the solidified number 2 quarterback in the league. This team is a team that has Jamar Chase, arguably a top 5 receiver. You have T. Higgins, who's on a contract year. You know he's going to play out of his mind this upcoming season. They have a talented offensive line. They just brought in Orlando Brown. Talented defense. Everything you want. A questionable coach, I will say that. But besides a questionable coach, great team all around. You have Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon. This great team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati Bengals, I kind of went in circles there, but they are my Super Bowl favorite for this upcoming year. They have everything you want. They have a quarterback who you like you mentioned with this Chiefs team. I think I am more scared of Joe Burrow than any player in the NFL. Strictly just because in college, when that magical historical season he had in 2019, it was just so scary because you knew, in that game against Bama, he went down 10 with like 5 minutes to go. He goes and scores, gets the ball back, they score again. The game's always in his hands. He's so poised. It's amazing to see. And he's always just scary, like especially in fantasy. if your opponent in fantasy has Joe Burrow, you know he's going to go out and throw for 300 and 3 or 4 touchdowns. Joe Shiesty's the number 2 best player in the NFL. I said it here, and I believe that. They're my Super Bowl contenders for next year.
Yeah, I think I'd still probably take the Chiefs, but I do. I think it's neck and neck between those two. And I don't necessarily want any of those two to win. It's just you can't deny the talent, but both of these rosters have. I mean, think back to the AFC Championship game between the Bengals and the Chiefs last year. When Joe Burrow got the ball back, I can't remember how much time was left, and they were pretty much on. I can't remember. They were on like the 9-10 yard line.
They were within their own red zone.
Yeah, they got the ball back with enough time, and I thought, oh, Joe Burrow's putting this game away. Obviously, that didn't happen. He got sacked, and they lost a few yards, and then we all know what happens. Pat Mahomes on that bum ankle tries to run out of bounds, gets pushed, 15-yard penalty. Game gets put away. You can argue. I don't think that they would have made the field goal had that 15-yard penalty been added on, but that's just me. You never know what happens in overtime. Maybe the Bengals go and close it out. But, I mean, that's just an example of how neck and neck I think that these two teams are. They both have those guys who you're like, oh, they got the ball back with 1:30, game's over. Oh, he got the ball back with 45 seconds, game's over. And, when two teams have a guy like that, they're incredibly dangerous, automatic contenders, even with the talent they have around them. So, yeah.
Do you think the Bengals beat that Eagles team last year, let's say in a hypothetical matchup? I think we think that they beat the Niners.
Yeah.
But do you think they beat the Eagles?
If you tell me Jalen Hurts plays the exact same way, if you tell me that Jalen Hurts doesn't have that fumble that turned into a touchdown, that's the only thing. The fumble that turned to a touchdown killed them. But if you tell me Jalen Hurts plays the exact same way, the Eagles play the exact same way, I'd have to say that they don't beat the Eagles. That's just me. Maybe a gut feeling, but you never know.
Right.
The Eagles weren't really able to get any pressure on. Neither team was able to get pressure on a QB. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to go against how Jalen Hurts played in that Super Bowl, but I mean Joe Burrow, it's like one of those things. It's like if you put him against a team of all-stars, all-pros, I'm probably taking Joe Burrow. It's one of those things where he's the only person I think that can challenge Mahomes at the moment for arguably best quarterback. It's Mahomes head and shoulders above everybody else right now. But Joe Burrow is the only guy I think that's even in the conversation right now, because as far as consistency and how well he's played over a great span of time. Jalen Hurts has had one great year. We'll have to have this conversation in a year. But Joe Burrow, I mean, he strikes the most fear to me as a fan, and I'm not a fan of most of the teams he's playing.
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing going for me is we're a Browns fan, and we've seemed to somewhat have the Bengals number over the years. And, it sucks that as a Browns team, we have a great team, but we face Joe Burrow twice a year.
Yeah.
So your Super Bowl favorite as of right now is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. Yeah,
and what I have to. Mine will be the Cincinnati Bengals. But that is going to do it for today's show. We went through 5 tiers. We had the bottom feeders. We had the mediocre tier. We had the barely missed the playoffs tier, the NFC, AFC playoff teams, as well as the Super Bowl contenders. Another great episode in the books. But I want to re-preface this by saying we are having a fan-chosen show next Tuesday in honor of hitting 100 subs. We're a little under right now, but we're going to get back to that, best believe it. But we hit a milestone. We want to feel like you guys matter. We want you guys to feel like we're listening to you.
Yeah.
So go ahead and drop those ideas. We have 2 so far, and I just want to say after we have all the submissions on Sunday, I'm going to take the culmination of all of the ideas. We're going to put them in a poll. Whatever is the biggest vote, that's going to win, right? Pretty self-explanatory. But until Tuesday, where we're going to have, I guess we don't know what we're going to talk about until Monday.
yeah, exactly. That's how it always is. But.
Right. And I also want to say, next Thursday, we're going to have our big 50th anniversary, not anniversary, but 50th edition of the show, right? 50th show, we're going to have the NBA awards show, run through all the big awards, the all-NBA teams, all that good stuff. But another great episode. Let us know down in the comments who you guys have winning the Super Bowl next year. Let us know who we have too high, too low, all that good stuff. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I think I like this tier system a lot more than talking about each individual team. You're able to kind of just group a lot of the teams are going to be there and just kind of generalize it to a sense. But yeah, I'm a good episode today.
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a great weekend of basketball. As we know, we have the playoffs coming up here pretty soon. But speaking on NFL terms strictly, I'm excited for the season to come up as we have the draft season here in less than a month.
Yeah.
But before we get out of here, the last thing I want to say, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube Shorts. Go ahead and support us there whenever you guys have the sec, as all the information you need for that is on your screen. But another great episode of the books. We'll see you guys on Tuesday with We Don't Know Yet. But stay happy, stay healthy. We're out.